In the quiet town of Ashford, Pennsylvania, there lived an old woman named Eleanor Whitmore. She was 72 years old, thin as a shadow, with silver hair always tied neatly behind her head. People saw her every morning walking slowly to the corner cafe, ordering the same black coffee, sitting by the window, and leaving exactly 30 minutes later. To the world, Eleanor was invisible. Children passed her without noticing. Neighbors barely remembered her name. Even the young waitress at the cafe called her Ma'am every day, never once asking who she really was. But Eleanor Whitmore had not always been invisible. Once, long ago, she had been powerful. And once, long ago, everything had been stolen from her. 40 years earlier, Eleanor was a successful woman. She and her husband, Thomas Whitmore, had built a construction company from nothing. Eleanor handled finances, contracts, and planning, while Thomas managed labor and expansion. They trusted each other completely. Or so Eleanor believed. Then came Richard Hale, Thomas's charming best friend. Richard was smooth, ambitious, and dangerous in ways Eleanor did not yet understand. Behind Eleanor's back, Thomas and Richard made secret deals. Papers were signed without her knowledge. Assets were moved. Accounts were drained. And then one night, Thomas died in a mysterious car accident. Within weeks, Eleanor lost everything. The company. The house. The money. Even her reputation. Richard Hale stood in court, wearing a sympathetic smile, while lawyers painted Eleanor as an unstable widow who didn't understand business. She lost the case. And just like that, Eleanor Whitmore became poor. What hurt Eleanor the most was not poverty. It was betrayal. Richard Hale had taken her life, piece by piece, and then walked away free, richer, stronger, untouchable. He built an empire using the foundation Eleanor had helped create. Years passed. Eleanor worked as a cleaner. Then as a caregiver. Then as nothing at all. She aged quickly, but she never forgot. Revenge did not burn inside her like fire. It froze. By the time Richard Hale became one of the most powerful businessmen in the state, Eleanor Whitmore was living in a small rented room with peeling paint and a broken heater. That was exactly how she wanted it. Because Richard Hale had one weakness: he underestimated people. Especially old women. Eleanor began to watch him. Quietly. Patiently. She read business articles, legal documents, and financial records at the public library. She learned how modern corporations hid their crimes behind charities and shell companies. She had time. And time was her greatest weapon. At 70, Eleanor applied for a part-time job. Not at Richard Hale's company, but at a law firm that handled corporate compliance. She cleaned offices at night. While others slept, Eleanor read. She memorized names. She copied schedules. She listened. And slowly, she began to understand where Richard Hale's empire was weakest: illegal land acquisitions, bribed officials, fake environmental reports. The same tricks he used against her decades ago. Eleanor contacted a young investigative journalist named Marcus Reed. At first, Marcus laughed when the old woman emailed him from a public library computer. But then she showed him documents. Proof. Evidence. Records no one else had. Marcus listened. And Eleanor smiled for the first time in years. The first article hit like a bomb. Hale Industries under federal investigation. Richard Hale appeared on television, calm but shaken. He denied everything. Eleanor watched from her small room, sipping tea with steady hands. Then came the second article. Then the third. Federal agents arrived. Stocks fell. Partners fled. Richard Hale's empire began to crack. One evening, Eleanor received a phone call. Richard Hale wanted to meet. He didn't recognize her at first. In the luxury restaurant, surrounded by gold and glass, Eleanor sat across from the man who destroyed her life. "You look familiar," Richard said. Eleanor leaned forward. "I built you," she replied softly. Recognition hit his face like fear. "You ruined me," Eleanor continued. "You took my husband, my company, my future." Richard laughed nervously. "You're confused." Eleanor placed a folder on the table. "Documents. Signatures. Proof. I waited 40 years, she said. "Because revenge tastes better when served cold." Richard's hands trembled. Eleanor did not ask for money. She did not ask for apology. She wanted justice. Richard Hale was arrested 2 weeks later. Sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. His name became a warning. Eleanor Whitmore returned to her routine. Same cafe. Same black coffee. Same window seat. But something had changed. She was no longer invisible. The waitress smiled differently. The newspaper carried her story. Marcus Reed called her the woman who outsmarted power. Eleanor smiled gently. Not because she hated Richard Hale, but because she had proven something the world often forgets.